When people see headlines about U.S. strikes, Iranian retaliation, or Israeli operations, it feels sudden. But this conflict didn't begin this year. It didn't begin with the 12-day war, and it didn't begin with nuclear negotiations. To understand where we are now, we have to go back more than 70 years, because this isn't a moment, it's a fuse that's been burning for decades. 1953, the coup that changed everything. The United States and Iran were not always enemies. In fact, during the early Cold War, they were strategic partners. But in 1953, the Iranian democratically appointed Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh nationalized the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, a British-controlled firm that dominated Iran's oil industry. Britain opposed it. The United States feared Soviet influence, so the CIA and British intelligence carried out a covert operation known as Operation Ajax that helped remove Mossadegh from power. The Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, was restored and eventually ruled as an absolute monarch. From Washington's perspective, this was Cold War containment. From many Iranians' perspective, it was foreign interference in their democracy. That difference in perspective became foundational. For the next 25 years, the United States backed the Shah with military aid and economic support. But resistance grew inside Iran over authoritarian rule, corruption, and Western influence. That resentment would eventually explode. In 1979, mass protests and strikes forced the Shah to flee. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini returned from exile and established the Islamic Republic of Iran. This wasn't just a leadership change, it was a complete ideological transformation. The new government rejected Western dominance and positioned itself against U.S. influence in the region. Later that year, Iranian students seized the U.S. embassy in Tehran. 66 Americans were initially taken hostage. 52 were held for 444 days. For Americans, this became a defining trauma. For many Iranians, it symbolized resistance against decades of foreign interference, especially the 1953 coup and U.S. support for the Shah. Diplomatic relations were severed, sanctions began, mistrust hardened to policy. From that point forward, hostility wasn't temporary, it became institutional. After 1979, Iran no longer recognized Israel as a legitimate state. Iranian leaders referred to Israel as an occupying force and supported groups opposed to it. Over time, Iran developed what it calls the Axis of Resistance, a network of allied groups across the Middle East. This includes Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, militias in Iraq, and the Houthis in Yemen. Iran provides funding, training, weapons, and strategic support. Israel views this network, along with Iran's missile and nuclear programs, as an existential threat. In response, Israel has carried out hundreds of strikes in Syria, targeting Iranian-linked positions, and has been widely reported to have conducted covert cyber and intelligence operations aimed at slowing Iran's nuclear development. This created a shadow conflict long before any direct confrontation. And because the United States is Israel's closest strategic ally, the triangle between Washington, Tehran, and Jerusalem became increasingly volatile. Iran's nuclear program actually began under the Shah with Western assistance. After the revolution, it continued, officially for civilian energy purposes. Iran has consistently denied seeking nuclear weapons, but concerns grew internationally about uranium levels and transparency. In 2015, Iran and 6 world powers signed the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, known as the JCPOA. Under the deal, Iran limited uranium enrichment to 3.67%, reduced its number of centrifuges, allowed extensive international inspections. In exchange, economic sanctions were lifted. Supporters argued it blocked Iran's pathway to a bomb and extended its breakout time to over a year. Critics argued the deal had sunset clauses and didn't address missile programs or regional proxy activity. In 2018, the United States withdrew from the agreement and reinstated sanctions. Iran gradually exceeded enrichment levels in response. By the early 2020s, enrichment levels reached as high as 60%, closer to weapons grade than ever before, though still shorter than 90% typically required for a nuclear weapon. The nuclear issue became the most dangerous pressure point in the relationship because nuclear capability doesn't just shift power between two countries, it shifts the balance of an entire region. Today's tensions are not random. They are the result of a 1953 coup that never stopped shaping political memory, a revolution that redefined national identity, decades of sanctions and isolation, proxy conflicts across multiple countries, nuclear mistrust, domestic political pressures in all 3 nations. Each side believes it is acting defensively. Each side believes the other is escalating, and that's what makes it dangerous. When people ask, who started this? The honest answer depends where you begin the timeline. Do you start in 1953, in 1979, in 2015? History doesn't begin where we're most comfortable starting it, and that's why understanding the backstory matters, because what looks like a sudden crisis is actually a decades-long chain reaction. In the next episode, we'll break down the most recent escalation, what specifically triggered the latest conflict, who acted first in this round, and what each side says it wanted. But before you can judge the present, you have to understand the past, and now you do.